Excellent. So we will start. When people is joining, we will accept. They will continue with the presentation at the moment. Okay, a few people is entering. So I will just start. Um, Please, the all the coordinators here, if you can admit the people when they are entering, so I can be with the slides. So welcome everybody. Thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure to have our second webinar from the Youth Coalition on Internet Governance. Um, we have an agenda today. This is the second webinar of a series of 3 webinars we are having as a preparation for the IGF 2022 in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. The idea of this webinar is to cover the thematic track on advanced technologies, including AI. We will cover some of the technologies or the advanced technologies we think are the ones that are going to be the next generation of technologies, and there are some risks that we identify um, from that, um, some challenges and opportunities that this technology is having or need to have into account, where the public policies referring to these technologies need to take into consideration. So the agenda of today is the introduction that I was doing. Then we will enter into the field of the artificial intelligence with an introduction to the bias problem and some concepts on the AI governance that will be in charge of Umut Pájaro Velázquez from Youth ICF Colombia, also Global Youth Coordinator. And then we will cover the Internet of Things, that is this technology around us. I will be presenting that part with some challenges and with some new things that arose last years or around this technology. And then we will cover the metaverse part with Jacob that we have here. And then Pedro de Perdigao Lana, that is our Brazilian youth expert, will share about blockchain. If I am true, it's a relation with blockchain and metaverse because of the non-fungible tokens. And then we will close with a questions and answers part, where Emilia will be moderating that part. Emilia Zalewska from Youth ICF Poland will be moderating that part with all your questions, and we will try to answer those. And finally, a closure inviting you to some of the sessions that will cover the advanced technologies track at the IGF 2022. There are a few sessions. We have also one with BINSERF that we are very glad to have about the interplanetary networks. So yes, this will serve as a capacity building exercise for all of us to discuss and start engaging on this topic prior to the IGF. So if the others does not have other announcements, I will start with Umut with the artificial intelligence part. The floor is yours, Umut.
Okay. Thanks, Nicholas. Well, I'm starting with bias and AI governance. Please go to the next slide. Yeah. Before to start to talking about biases in artificial intelligence, we need to know what is artificial intelligence. There is a lot of formal definition of artificial intelligence, but mostly all of them are related to um, a field, a field or tools or that use to imitate or solving problems as a human, as copying the human decision making process. How these machines or these computers solve these problems? Well, they they start to uh, use some robust data sets that enable to do that. And the idea behind artificial intelligence is to make our life easier and also to provide them to enough independence to uh, in some way evolve while they are solving the problems that we are given to them. Inside of artificial intelligence, there is a lot of putting subfields, but most of the subfields that we see right now, as we refer as artificial intelligence, that the ones that we see in real life, in on everyday life, the most are machine learning and deep learning. But there are only two types of artificial intelligence because there is more types of artificial intelligence that actually are being used, but they are the most commonly used. If we see in our everyday life, pretty much I could say that machine learning is probably the one that we use the most, and it probably is the one that is on in most of the machines that we use today. Next slide. Um I, I'm using this classification of IBM or the types of artificial intelligence. I think I really like this classification because it actually clarifies the capacity or the states that we are right now in when it comes to artificial intelligence. They use the term of weak artificial intelligence or strong artificial intelligence. When they talk about weak artificial intelligence, they're talking about a narrow artificial intelligence or artificially narrow intelligence. These are programs or artificial intelligence that um, are trained to perform specific tasks. For example, for example, the different assistants that we have in our cell phone, as Siri or Alexa from Amazon, they are, for example, narrow artificial intelligence because they are programmed to do a specific task that is being an assistant for us. So if you see, in this case, we talk about weak, and the weak is not exactly doesn't mean that it's not powerful enough to may really big impact on everyday life of the people. Um, but they don't have um, one of the main values to consider then as a really artificial intelligence, that is the self-consciousness and equal the capacity of a human to resolve problems or something like that. And strong AI, we have two kinds of strong AI: the artificial general intelligence and the artificial super intelligence. This one probably we're going to see it in the future when we started to see more development in quantum computing. But for now, we don't going to see this kind of strong AI in real life or in pretty much in any applications because this concept, if we think, is the concept that we all think is actually the concept that we think that we think in the first place when we talk about artificial intelligence, that it's conscious machines or that intelligence is equal to us and or better than us or something like that. But that's something that could happen really this time in the future. No, I don't think it's going to happen close because we start we are really in an early stage of quantum computer. But let's clarify: artificial intelligence or general AI, AGI, is a theoretical form of AI where a machine would have an intelligence equal to humans. It will have a self-aware consciousness that has ability to solve problems, learn, and plan for the future. And the artificial superintelligence, ASI, also known as superintelligence, will surpass the intelligence and ability of the human brain. So these two, as I said, we don't are in that stage yet. Well, as you can see at the moment, this we are in a stage of artificial intelligence where humans are the ones behind the data that provides the fit the programs or train the programs that make them work. So we need to know and acknowledge that all of us are biased, are biased, and has some prejudice that also affect the way that we program this kind of technologies. So, what is a bias? It's an inclination or prejudice towards or against a person or group in a way that is unfair. This this specific the specific word is really important for us. Unfair, a particular concentration interest in an area or subject. It means to give privilege to one and not to others in some way. It's pretty much that. Next slide, please. In this case, there is different kind of bias, but when it comes to artificial intelligence, we're going to concentrate in the algorithmic bias and the human biases. The algorithmic bias and the systematic and repetitive errors that create unfair results. For example, to give more privilege to certain group or users instead others without a logical reason. They just repetitive. They just give a privilege to certain group. Next slide, please. And we have the human biases in data. There are specific related data biases and another interpretation biases that are actually more from the side of from the human perspective. The data biases are reporting bias. So what people share is not a reflection of actual real world frequencies, so it doesn't reflect the reality. Selection bias, the selection doesn't reflect a random sample. This means that the data that you are compiling for in your data set, it was selected with a specific objective. Outgroup homogeneity bias, people tend to see outgroup members as more alike than in-group members when comparing attitude, values, personality traits, and other characteristics. And there is like a bias that is probably a mix of data interpretation, that is confirmation bias, that's the tendency for share, interpret, favor, and recall information in a way that confirms or pre-system belief or hypothesis. The interpretation is the overgeneralization, is to come a conclusion for a specific case based on a too general information. That's just something really general to explain everything. That is overgeneralization. Correlation fallacy, the confusing correlation without causation, and automatization bias, propensity for humans to favor suggestion for automated decision making system over contradictory information without automation. Next. To avoid this kind of bias, also I forgot to mention here because I would like to concentrate in the aspects of governance, and the aspects of governance are more centered right now in addressing the human and the algorithmic bias. But there is also, we have to include in this when we talk about AI biases, the bias that came from the private sector. That means the bias that people put in the code because of the objective of the product that is developed. So we need to have that in mind also, that the private sector also put some biases into the codes than training the machine, the different machine learning algorithms. Some recommendations to avoid this is it is necessary to ID our models in terms of demographic groups to ensure that there are no biases in this regard. Machine learning models, and particularly neural models, are very likely to learn useful features for solving problems in training data. We don't know which don't necessarily generalize to other domains. It is important to report demographic status of further data used to train and test some model. Yes, we need diversity. We need to know. Yeah. So we need to say to people, this is a diversity diverse enough, or it doesn't. So we know what kind the amount of bias of fairness that can be in the model. And finally, the most important recommendation is diversifying our data sets. Next slide, please. Well, one of the many solutions that actually I propose is to have into account when we do all these technologies is this for the faith approach, that is fairness, accountability, transparency, and ethics. This approach consists in to have these four included in all the 4Ds, as I like to call it, the design, development, deployment, and detecting of biases. And when we doing artificial intelligence, or when we implementing artificial intelligence. Also, I would like to let you know that detection of biases is auditing. Um, I just put it detection of biases, just make it easy to remember because it's pretty much the same. But it's easy to remember for this that and the rest. And this phase model also with the phase approach also considers that can be these words should include government, NGOs, social movement, technical sector, private sector, and intergovernmental institutions. So it means that they have a multi-stakeholderism model, and it must be a bottom up or bottom to the top model, and they try to gain equal opportunities for everyone. Next slide, please. Well, there comes the relation between data and fairness. I really wanted to mention this part. This part is a little more a little more technical, but it's important to know that that is some concepts that actually are in the technical world that can be applied later in the in the context of governance or law. For example, fairness is defined formally as a mathematical model as the probability or result related to the prediction with the same ground truth on the different protected attributes must be equal in all time. What is a protected attribute? So they are the variables against which we want to protect the bias algorithms such as gender, ethnicity, country, age, and other related to that. So this means that for example, if you if we had the same conditions for a woman or for a man, the result must be the same every time. So the model is fair. If there is a difference between one over other, so that when we start to calculate there in the algorithm how biased or how unfair the algorithm is. So there is actually a way to apply the fairness into the algorithms. So there is a way to measure this. So it makes easier in some way also to the technical part to address this concept that came from the social science and from the law into the code. Next slide, please. Well, and there comes this thing or AI governance that actually is something new. Their governance consists in the development and application of frameworks, policies, and initiatives that should be for the protection of the different human rights. Right now, the conversation on the different frameworks, policy, and initiatives around the world are 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 really centered in bias, and there is also another problem that I'm trying to address right now, but mostly about bias. That's why I mentioned bias before, for you to know that actually uh, from the AI governance aspects, they trying to find a solution between different different sets of framework policies and initiatives around the world. These different different development and applications must gain to solution to problems using auto-regulation, technical standard, and human rights defense. This means that it must be human-centered or human in the loop all the time. This that's the most general approach that all these framework policy and initiatives have right now. Also have an open perspective, a transdisciplinary and no formal way to approach to the AI problems, and it can just be centered on the states as the countries, and intergovernmental institution or NGO also has to be centered in the private sector, because the private sector is important in this case, as I mentioned before, because most of the products that are developed are biased according uh, to the primary user the company wants to buy that product. Next slide, please. Can an AI governance is just one AI governance? Yes. The multi-stakeholder follow the next point. That is one established in every country and national AI policies that include, by design, democratic values, ensure public participation in policy making, also create a strong mechanism for independent oversight or auditing OAI system. This must be done also in a language that everyone can understand. So the use of really technical languages is not recommended, because the idea that everyone can be part of this. Ensure fairness, responsibility, transparency, and ethics in all the 4Ds in all systems, in all AI systems. Commit to this principle in the development, acquisition, and disposal of AI system for public services. Study using the facial recognition for mass surveillance. That's pretty much important, but there are some words around it. Reduce or stop the deployment or lead time autonomous weapon. Start implementing the UNESCO AI recommendation and other recommendation that came from intergovernmental institutions. Establish a global and legally binding convention for AI. This is probably the most important point and the most hard to do it. So this is a map the AI framework policy initiatives around the world. Pretty much, there is the ones in white, there are no data or they don't have a law right now about the AI, if they have AI framework policies and initiative around initiative. The rest are right now do with at least one initiative or framework or policy related to artificial intelligence specifically. If you see the most, they have the countries with most AI policies are pretty much in the global north, with the exception of China and India, and yeah, surprisingly Colombia. Uh, next slide, please. And to finalize, I would like to recommend you to some intergovernmental frameworks that you can follow or read that will give you an idea of the stage of AI governance right now around the world. These are the universal guidelines for artificial intelligence that was released in 2018 by Public Voice. The GPA AI ethics principle of 2080, the GPA in accountability in development for AI. In 2020, the OECD AI principle. This is really important, probably one of the most important that I've seen everyone should follow. The G20 AI principle, they are pretty much similar between them. There's just a couple of different words between both of them. The AI principle for children in Latin America and the Caribbean, this is probably one of the few, I think one of the few, but it's probably one of the most complete, related to children in AI technologies. So yeah, it's good to read it. The GPA on facial recognition technology also is good. The another one that is really important is the UNESCO recommendations on AI ethics. The Caribbean AI policy roadmap, and also the Africa CPHR resolution 473. And the last ones are the Council of Europe AI Convention from 2021. This actually is still in discussion right now, but the draft is it's a really interesting read. The U AI app that actually came out this week or last week, I don't remember, it really was uh, was this month. I think was this month. The China regulations or recommendation algorithm. This is really interesting because this address a lot of topics related to artificial intelligence, and not only artificial intelligence but also Internet of Things. So that is one of the topics that it contains, and other things as blockchains and metaverse or those kind of things are in that China regulation or recommendation algorithms. And the EU Digital Service Act that is related, that's going to be probably one of the first binding acts about Internet of Things developed by an intergovernmental uh, institution. And that was be all for my part. Thank you. Now I'm give the floor to Nicolas, that is going to talk about Internet of Things.
Thank you, Umut. Thank you so much. We had a lot of questions that will be answered at the end of the presentation. Then we switch to Internet of Things. Well, Internet of Things, as you are seeing in the picture there, is this quantity of devices being connected to the internet, or not to the internet, but a simil internet that at the end is uploaded to the internet or downloaded from the internet to these sensors. We have seen that these virtual interactions have changed the way we communicate on a daily basis. We are using these smart watches, these AI assistants, different devices, really, or things that are outside there, different sizes, different forms, and we use every day all these things in our fridges, in our televisions. So we are constantly using these devices when we are opening our garage to put our car there. We need to know that these devices need to work well, right? What happens if you cannot open your garage? You cannot keep your car. So that are some of the things that are soft, because there are other ones that will be more hard in the sense of affecting human rights, right? And the number of applications and interactions also rise in the recent years. We have seen due to the COVID-19 that all the work have become digital, the schools, the works, all the things are becoming virtual, and the number of interactions, the number of interaction between these devices and between these applications also increased, because about the COVID-19 tracking applications that tracks when a person is near another one, and you can give fluxes and a lot of graphics about these human interactions via these devices. Also, we have seen with the artificial intelligence that a lot of technologies like face recognition and other things are in the loop and providing information for further actions, right? We are seeing that not only these Internet of Things are sensors, but also actuators, right? That has an effect in the real world after our actions in the digital. So also security threats and data breach, practical misuse of the algorithms and lack of international standards are related to all this development of these technologies on the IoT and the AI, because they are very related, right? We will not cover like specific things on the threats or the safety or privacy part, because it's for another topic, but we are seeing here how human rights are affected by these technologies. The Internet of Things, as you know, was to facilitate and revolutionize the digital space. This is for helping the human on the tasks they do, and the exclusion of the young people who are the most consumers of this technology. We know that the young people are the most that uses the internet nowadays. The majority of users are the young people, are the capable ones of using the technology. So we are, because of that, the most exposed to this technology, right? The most affected. This is compromising the adoption and the final regulation of these innovations. And the use of this technology and how to actively participate in the discussion and the standardization at the different levels, at the national, regional, and international level, and how the multi-stakeholder model can help bring different people to solutions and there are different visions, different goals, but we are trying to find a consensus, right? Here are more examples about the IoT. You know that these have been used in farms by drones when you need to measure humidity or different properties of the air or properties of the plants itself. Also to help doing the water supply, right? For these plants, you can now measure when a plant, when a tree needs water, really. So these devices can work automatically. We have also, for the meteorology thing, some information about what will be the future the next day. So you can plan in advance, the farmers can plan in advance about the things. Another area when IoT is used is in the medical one. You know that now with a lot of new devices, you can be at home and monitoring yourself and sending a report automatically to your doctor or to your medicine, and then you can have feedback more rapidly, right? There was the first case when a person need this device that helped when you had a heart attack, right? And the first drone in the USA flew through all the flew to where this person was, and help and save this person, right? So these technologies are advancing a lot in the sense of helping ourselves. So we have seen some application areas, but there are a lot. Smart cities, when the adoption of 5G will be in our next future, we will have autonomous vehicles that will, or at least the theory says that will prevent at least the 99.9% of traffic accidents. So that is very helpful because these autonomous vehicles will be connected between them with the 5G. That is a more direct connection and a less lagging connection than 4G. And then we talked about these drones or flying objects. Also, there are some challenges or threats about what happened in the frontiers with the weapon autonomous systems, right? That are shooting at some kind. So and also the health and the military, right? The health with these nano devices in the future or in the near future, I could say, that will be multiple or millions of devices inside your body that will help you when you need a specific supply for some of the health products. Maybe you don't need to go to the doctor because the software will identify themselves which chemical you are needing, and they will provide it instantly. So all these nanobots or things need to be connected to the internet or at least to a backend. So need to have a unique address and several challenges we will need to face. And here is the example about the firmware updates. That is one of the most challenging things because not all the devices are automatically updated. There are a lot of how to say legacy devices that are out there that cannot be updated, and that is a problem because nowadays we are seeing every day new CVEs, new security threats, right? Because the technology is advancing and there are old libraries that have vulnerabilities, for example. So these devices, in this case the black sheep, is not being updated and is surrounded by a lot of devices that can generate a denial of service attack, for example, using this black sheep to directionate other attacks. So what will happen with the updates of the libraries in these technologies? It's a problem, a real problem that all the manufacturers need to address, and we as the consumers need to know when a device is not updatable, it's a risk to buy those devices. So I mentioned some of the challenges. One is about the consumer protection. There are a lot of frameworks. For example, the OTA framework that is trying to have a labeling schema for these devices, as you have in your electronic devices in your house, your electrical devices. When you see this A plus energy efficiency label in the devices that is for more greening, right? Well, the future electronic devices we will buy at the stores will have some labeling saying which data this device is transmitting, which security protocol is using, where the periodicity of this information being shared. So a lot of information for the consumer to know what is the level of security and the level of the data, the kind of data they are transmitting and by which way, right? So another challenge is the standardization of the protocols, and I say about the updating of the libraries and also about a problem of the energy because these IoT devices, some kind are how to say have different restrictions or constraints in the sense of the energy use, in the sense of the battery. Some of them are tiny batteries. So these protocols, these mathematical algorithms need to be soft, right? To not spend a lot of battery of these devices. So new protocols for these restricted or constrained environments need to be created and have been created, but now the industry is adopting them. Then about the supply chain, now we are seeing that we want to monitorize all the imports and exports, so you can have devices that follow all the products. It's a matter of the quality also. If you lose the cold chain, some products will be under quality. So this is very good for the consumers in the future to know more about what happened with the product in the entire life cycle. Then I mentioned about the firmware update problem. What will happen with the libraries that are getting old and these devices cannot be updated? The issue of the authentication, in contrast with new technologies such as quantum computers. Now we have a problem in the balance because we want to have a soft algorithm that can use in this battery or constrained environments, but at the same time we need strong cryptography in these devices to assure that the next generation of quantum computers can be protected from that. And then I mentioned about the mass denial of service attacks, that because of the quantity of this sensor or the quantity of these things in the Internet of Things is a giant number in comparison with the computers or laptops you could have or mobile phones you could have at your home. These are massive devices, so they can be used for massive attacks. That is a very, very important risk. And then the last one I don't want to leave mentioning is the accidents. We have seen some accidents like the kid that was playing chess with a robot that was injured by this robot because of the kid put the hand in the wrong moment, so the machine cut a part of the finger. Was something very bad. But also some other accidents that have been happening with the cleaner machines, like this photo here when the machine stroke like the baby. And then another things that need to be with the safety of the humans, right? Because the machines are taking a role in our lives, and we need to go there. Well, that was some of the things I want to mention about this technology, and we will cover other aspects and some of the IGF sessions in Addis Ababa. Now I give the floor to Jacob, that will talk a little about the metaverse, this new paradigm. Yes, please, Jacob, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation. I was asked to speak a few words about the metaverse concept. So because the time is running up, let's get straight to the point. So let's go to the next slide, please. There are a few examples here on this slide and next two slides. So we can go through them straight to the next slide. How the metaverse could look alike. I said could look alike, but let's explain it from the beginning. So let's go for the next slide. And here we can think where this term actually originates from. So in 1992, Neil Stephenson, the science fiction writer, created the novel called Snow Crash. It's a novel about the hero who lives in a dystopian version of the world where people living in a kind of shipping containers, and all the life is concerned about the metaverse. Metaverse is the vision of the world, as you can see it on the slide in this short quotation, when the main hero just put his goggles on and computer-generated universe is being created into these devices, pumping into his earphones and drawing onto his goggles. And then there were a few projects about recreation of such a vision of the meta universe, but nothing really big happened for around 30 years until 2021, when during the Facebook Connect event, this is the conference that yearly was hosted by the Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg announces the new plan to create a new main product called the Metaverse. And here are a few snapshots on this slide that you can see from this presentation. However, it's hard to put it into 10 minutes speech, but generally I highly encourage you to watch it on the YouTube platform. You can find it easily by putting Facebook Connect 2021. It's nearly 1.5 of an hour of presentation. But in general, it's the idea of recreating this vision from the Snow Crash novel that was described 30 years ago by Neil Stephenson. So let's try to define it in general. Next slide, please. And in general, from the theoretical vision, The metaverse is being described as the next iteration of the internet, understood as a single, universal, and immersive virtual world that works thanks to the virtual reality and augmented reality technologies, especially headsets. However, it's most often right now being used mostly just as a kind of a buzzword for nearly almost every 3D virtual world that is focused more on social interaction. That's why it can be considered sometimes that it's the same, such as the Decentraland or Second Life or Roblox or Fortnite. But in fact, currently, as a state of art, these are just online games and online platforms, and not nearly even close to this whole idea of the next version of the internet as a single place, as the meta universe. So we can shortly say that metaverse does not exist yet, but is commonly announced and will be probably materialized within the next few years. So let's take a look closely on some opportunities that metaverse brings to us. Well, there are just selected few, but just to name it, first we can speak of the education and all the benefits that everyone can participate in classes, no matter where they live in, and learn with people from different cultures, and maybe not only in theory but also in practice, so they can gain practical skills. For example, if you have a classes on engineering studies, how the engine is built, you not only have to look on your one colleague that is presenting the topic on one model, but you can look at 20 or 30 or how many people attend the classes models that was built, and you can disassemble them in your time whenever you want and however you like. The next opportunity is definitely a kind of socialization. Let's imagine the travels, concerts, extreme sports, and many more events and activities that can take part without the feeling of danger and the possibility of being physically harmed. You can just try to climb the Mount Everest without risking your life in trying to achieve it. Also, for the matter of business, there are many places for new jobs and markets. For example, some of them are actually happening right now: virtual art, fashion, and many others. And actually, you can do whatever you want and try to earn money through that. So, after all, we can finally say that you can be a gamer who earns money by playing video games, and that's definitely one of the every gamer's dream. But all these opportunities are not alone, and there are many challenges according to metaverse concept. So let's go for the next slide and quickly show them to you. So for these selected challenges, of course, the first one that everyone thinks of is the privacy matters. We being heard that data is the new oil, and if there is a one general administrator for the metaverse, it will definitely know everything. Even already VR and AR devices collect a lot of data with built-in cameras and sensors, so there are huge threats to our privacy, but generally can be also many benefits. The second thing that I put on the slide is the better life, the risk of better life, because I believe that it's quite obvious to say and easy to notice that can be very more interesting than the normal life, because due to physical limitations and economic crisis, they might not be not as attractive as, for example, free joint space flight to go shopping on Mars, just sitting in your living room couch. Also, there are many regulatory issues, and right now we are in the face of some even such fundamental ones like the property rights issues. Most legal systems do not recognize currently ownership of virtual property that all belongs to the platform operators. I think that's definitely one of the basic challenge that we have to compete with, because right now we only see few judgments, especially in common law countries, that recognize NFTs and virtual currencies as a kind of property. Meanwhile, in other countries, we only see it through the part of complicated relational, contractual relationships between the parties of the agreements. So there are few of them. I hope that we can speak about it in future or maybe within a few minutes. But let's finish for that for now, and let me give the floor for the next person speaking about similar concepts that are closely connected with the metaverse concepts. Thank you.
Thanks, Jacob. I will try to be brief here. Um, it's important to know some basic concepts about the blockchain because it's actually it's fundamental to other technologies, including those that were talked about today. Since it's one of those really hyped technologies and really hyped concepts, it's actually being used for many of those innovations that we are talking about and appears in the media, in the news, of things that will be revolutionary and change everything that we'll do in the future. Also, this is not true. Uh, it's not many times. This is not true. So many times, as I said, this can be just hype, but it's really something important and something that will invariably cause some transformation in society. So it's important to know how it works and why it's so important. So essentially, blockchains are a special kind of database chaining together blocks of information referring to a set of transactions. Transactions widely comprehended as transactions in the strict sense and information data in the general sense. So blockchains are based on distributed ledger technologies, and it's more accurate terminologically, in fact, to speak of blockchains in the plural, as they are a range of ledgers that share some fundamental principles. The most famous blockchains are based on shared, decentralized peer-to-peer networks of participants, where each element of this network is called a node and stores a local copy of the blockchain in which acts according to a certain consensus protocol. So the operation of these protocols can vary greatly, and the best choice depends on the use and the objectives of these DLTs, of this blockchain. So among the most famous are proof of work, used by the Bitcoin network, and proof of stake, which Ethereum is implementing a migration as we speak. And this proof of stake consensus protocol is more efficient in the use of resources. But the alternatives are actually in the number of dozens for years, so there are not only those two. It is worth remembering that the open nature of blockchains is not one of the inherent or necessary characteristics of this technology. So some blockchains can be configured to be centralized and closed, which can be very useful in certain government or banking applications. This technology distinguishes itself by making records that tend to be immutable. It's possible to change at least some aspects of it, as one can see on hard forks, so it's not truly and profoundly immutable. It tends to be immutable. And it's also marked by the possibility of achieving a high degree of authentication of the integrity without requiring a central authority, mainly through hash functions, that is converting data in a probabilistically unique fixed number of alphanumeric digits, timestamps, public and private keys, and nonces, which are handle numbers for encryption and verification by the system. Besides the registered substantial information, blocks are also composed of a section that points to the previous block. This means that any change to the original data changes the result of the hash function to an absolute different value, affecting the entire chain and it's possible to be verified by the rest, the multiple nodes of the network. So that's why the net technology has this name, and it's considered to be so secure. Next slide, please. It's Smart contracts is also an important concept, and it may cause some confusion at first. There is actually no necessary reference to a simulation of intelligence, and that is when, as it happens when we deal with technologies such as artificial intelligence. Nick Szabo, who first coined the concept in the 90s, described it as a computerized transaction protocol that executes the terms of a contract, which means promises specified in digital form integrated into hardware and software to automate and facilitate contracting processes in a manner relatively autonomous from direct human action. In their simplest form, they are a computer program that performs a contractual operation in an automated way. That's why common examples about what are smart contracts say that a soda machine is a primitive form of smart contracts, not actually a smart contract as we know it today, but it's a primitive form of it. However, other relevant definitions of smart contracts exist. An important one is that coined by Vitalik Buterin, one of the creators of Ethereum, a blockchain framework formulated with the operation and elaboration of smart contracts as its basis and focus. So he defines smart contracts as systems which automatically move digital assets according to arbitrary, pre-specified rules. And this definition is important because it's with Ethereum that several barriers that made smart contracts not such an interesting idea are overcome and allow the effective elaboration and use with bilateral automation being the basis today of most transactions related to things such as NFTs that we will talk about later. However, it's important to mention that besides actually not being actually smart, these technologies are not also necessarily contracts, legally speaking. To enable the use of traditional enforcement tools, such as the judiciary or arbitration, one should be careful to create the contracts respecting the boundaries of law and other relevant regulations. It's important to emphasize this because a smart contract does not actually need these enforcement tools to be effective, as one of its main features is self-enforceability, meaning that it can execute what was agreed between the parties by force of its own codes and its electronic agents, even if it has as an object an illegal clause, an illegal business that would be declared new in courts. This can, of course, be reverted afterwards in court through these traditional tools, if the parties are known and the transaction is voidable. But this also, of course, happens outside the blockchain, not into it. Last but not least, next slide, please. We get one of the tech concepts most talked about during the last few years, non-fungible tokens or NFTs. Tokens are representations of facts or rights, which can be roughly approximated to the idea of symbols. Blockchain's tokens are basic elements attached to a network transactions in these ledgers. They were first made famous through cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin, but they can actually represent a wide variety of items and rights, including assets outside of the blockchains, with several functions such as entitling some action or service, or even participating in the profits of a company. These tokens can be fungible when they are interchangeable with others of the same types and value, and even divisible into smaller parcels, such as cryptocurrencies. But a non-fungible token is different because each one is unique. You can exchange one for another, considered to be of the same value, or even exchange them for other non-fungible tokens, but the goods that you will have after the exchange will be objectively different from the one you originally had. So these general notions, however, remain only on the surface of what NFTs are, without explaining their nature or how they work. Can you change to the next slide, please? So people can have an example of what NFT is. So the most basic and commonly used form, NFTs are metadata about a given digital file, passing through hash functions and written to the blockchain using smart contracts, commonly the ERC 721 or the ERC 1155 standards. This process is known as minting, and it consumes computational energy. People can, and not infrequently do, write works directly to the blockchain instead of the metadata. However, the minting process can be very expensive, depending on the blockchain consensus protocol, and increases exponentially with file size, up to hundreds or thousands or even millions of dollars for high-quality images, for example. So the priority choice for metadata mining, however, means that the token itself is an indicator of the location where the digital asset can be found, and should not be confused with the asset itself. This means that a problem on the hosting server and the tendentially immutable character of the blockchain can cause this indicator to end up simply pointing to a broken page, something that has become popularly known as link rot. In other words, the token is a certificate or receipt that references the asset, and it is this certificate or receipt that is unique, not the digital asset itself. So this means that this technology alone is not able to reflect a guarantee of authenticity of the digital file itself, because it does not say that you have the copy, but rather a copy with certain properties reflected in the metadata. Contracts and other guarantees external to this blockchain are necessary to achieve this goal of authenticity. That is, it is guaranteed legally rather than technologically. In technical terms, the owner of this NFT will not exactly be an owner, someone with the property of this thing. It will have control over the token itself, not the digital file. Although those two different items can be connected through binding agreements or other technologies that are not necessarily linked to the blockchain. I think I can, since we are out of time, I can end it up right here, so we can go to the question and answers.
Thank you very much, Pedro, and thank you very much to all the speakers who shared our knowledge and expertise with us today. Because we have run slightly out of time, we decided that the questions will be answered in the chat, and we also created a special document for that. So all the questions that have been put in the chat are in this document. I will share the link to it one more time. If your question hasn't been answered during this webinar, our speakers will soon update the document and put their answers there, so don't worry, you will get your answer. So I think I will pass the floor to Nicholas, who will conclude the meeting.
Yes. Just to conclude, we have some final slides here for an invitation to the IGF. First of all, to mention about what is YCIG. I think you all know, but just in case, we are an official recognized dynamic coalition at the IGF, whose goal is to advocate for the voice of the youth. Our main mission is to bring the voice of the youth to the IGF and to encourage all the youth IGF initiatives from the national, regional, and the global level to be providing or contributing with recommendations to the IGF. So we want the young voices there. And since more than 10 years, this has been a natural space for all the youth interested in IG-related things to engage with the rest of the stakeholders. We have had different conversations in the past and the symposiums that the youth are another stakeholder, right? Instead of they having their own role or their own hat of the stakeholder, they are a natural stakeholder that need to be heard, because we know that we are the most that uses the technology, as I said in the beginning, how to get involved with this youth coalition or the different youth initiatives around the world. First of all, becoming a member of the YCSG by joining our Google group. You can easily find it in our website, that is ycsgweb.wordpress.com. And then you have the possibility to register to the IGF 2022, that is the Global Internet Governance Forum. It's a hybrid meeting, so you can join whenever you are virtual or whenever you are on site in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. Then there is an important session, that is the Global Youth Summit, that will be a fifth workshop after all the regional IGFs that have had workshops around the different thematic tracks, as we are seeing in the webinars. And the Global Youth Summit will be with a conversation with a round parliamentary table, really, to talk about all these challenges, all the concerns that the youth has. That will be the Global Youth Summit to be held in the 28th of November in morning time, early morning in UTC. And then to participate at the Youth IGF event, you can find what is your youth NRI initiative more closer to your country, or you can join the regional or the global ones that are a lot. You can find all the NRI youth initiatives at the INGO Forum website, the official one. There is a list. There are currently 150 youth initiatives around the world, so it's a lot. And then here we have some recommended sessions that you can later find in the presentation when we will share with you. That is, for example, the IGF newcomer session. These sessions are related with this thematic track that we see today, that is addressing advanced technology, including AI. We will have a newcomer session that is a general one for you, and then a lightning talk about how to regulate artificial intelligence from a queer perspective, that Umut will be in charge of that session. Then we have the main Youth Coalition Internet Governance session that is focused on the road to the future IGFs, will held on the 30th. We have a very good session with Vint Cerf, that is the pioneer of the internet, about the interplanetary networks. We'll cover about low orbit satellites and different technologies for space, and how to have a public part of the internet also in the space, right? It's a very good conversation. We will cover some aspects of these advanced technologies in space. And then another one about AI, that is pathways to equitable and safe artificial intelligence development. But there will be a plenty. These sessions are youth-led sessions. That is important for you to know. But we have all the rest of the thematic tracks also with youth-led sessions, but also with senior stakeholder sessions that could be of interest for you. No more than that. Here are the next sort of the networks of the YCIG. Please, the others in the call here, the coordinators, if you have to say some words, I pass the floor to Emilia, and then we will close the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Nicolas. As I already have written in the chat, thank you very much for your presence here. I hope you have enjoyed this webinar, and also that it was useful for you and for your path toward the IGF this year in Ethiopia. And there were a lot of great questions asked here in the chat. So thank you very much for your involvement, and hope to see you soon at the next webinars and other activities. Thank you.
Thank you so much. See you in the webinar 3 on the 22nd of November. That will be our last webinar in this series of webinars. Thank you so much, all.
Thank you. See you around.
Thank you. See you.